We got some critical information from the San Diego police chief, specifically the timeline. What he said is just a little over 2 hours ago, authorities were called to the Islamic Center of San Diego due to reports of gunshots. He said they arrived within about 4 minutes, police did, and then found these three men victims in the parking lot of the mosque. He said authorities then went to try to enter the mosque, as they often do. They'll try to identify any potential shooter. But then police got calls of yet more shots fired at another area near the mosque. They then went to that location. They said they learned that there was a landscaper there who had been fired upon, but thankfully was not struck by bullets. But here, I have to admit, Jake, is the most strange, bizarre, however you want to describe it, part. Authorities say that they found two men ages 17 and 19 in a vehicle they believe to be the suspects. They believe they died from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. That raises a lot of questions about, A, who those people are, but obviously what potential motivation there was here. We have had this question over the last couple hours whether the shooter or shooters, plural, may have been associated with this mosque or whether this was complete, targeted violence from the outside. We did appear to get some indication of an answer to that from the police chief, because he said that they have now brought in the FBI, the San Diego field office. He said they are treating this as a hate crime until they've determined that it's not. And of course, what that signals to us is that that would not appear to be someone who was a member of the Islamic Center there, if they're describing this as a hate crime. But again, a lot of questions here. We've covered, you and I, so many acts of mass violence in this country, so many shootings. Rarely do you ever see two people engaged in the same type of targeted act of violence in a shooting. But here, authorities say they believe that these are two teens are indeed the suspects. A lot of questions about who they are, what the motivation was, and obviously why they decided to take their own lives outside this houses of worship. We often say that there are a lot of questions, more questions than answers. This is truly one of those very peculiar situations that authorities are trying to get to the bottom of, Jake.
Steve Moore, what was your first reaction to what we heard from police, the San Diego Police Department, about the shooting at the largest mosque in San Diego County?
I was kind of surprised at the fact that we didn't know that there were 5 fatalities until now. It obviously happened in a very short amount of time when they found the shooters fairly quickly. What's interesting to me, Jake, is that obviously 2 shooters, you rarely get that. The other thing is that I responded to an active shooter one time who went to a Jewish community center. After escaping from the Jewish community center, he shot a postal worker who was non-white. And the reason was he was a white supremacist, and that was fair game for him. The fact that they just randomly shot at a gardener makes me wonder if they had an agenda that would involve, white supremacy, something like that, that would cause an anger at Muslims, and at the same time, people who might appear not to be citizens.
Josh Sherrard, police said the suspected shooters appeared to have died from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. They were 17. They were 19. We were told. What does that say to you?
The questions that we're going to have to answer concerning where to go from here is, were they involved in a larger operation? We're going to need to be digging into investigating their homes, their digital assets, social media accounts, discords that may have been a part of, wondering if they were part of a larger organization or group, and wondering if this is just the first in a series of possible targeted attacks. Like Josh and Steve both pointed out, we don't see multiple shooters in these attacks very often. The vast majority of active shooters across the country for the last 25 years have been lone wolves. Is this part of a larger organization that we need to be concerned with? We need to rule that out as quick as possible, especially when we're talking about this age group that is very, very susceptible to that radicalization, as we've seen over the last several years.
Josh Campbell, how unusual is it when there are horrific mass shootings like this one, how unusual is it for there to be more than one shooter?
It's exceedingly rare. I mean, we almost never see it. We talk about the number of acts of violence that happen in this country involving firearms. Rarely do you see two people involved or two people or more trying to go toward the same target. We have seen incidents where people are firing at each other and they end up striking people. Again, this is very rare. We've seen incidents. I'm in Los Angeles, over in the San Bernardino area. Several years ago, there was a terrorist attack at a government building that involved multiple fatalities. That involved a man and a wife, two actual shooters. But again, this is very rare. But this does raise a lot of questions, a lot of work for law enforcement ahead. And just to break this down, I mean, we're seeing the images on what the scene looked like at the time whenever police were responding. But now that it's secure, they believe that there's no longer a threat. They believe the suspects have now been neutralized and are deceased. They have to work to try to identify them, but they also have to scour that area to gather any potential evidence that they can. These two people aren't going to be prosecuted, obviously, but they will try to work to determine, was there someone else who might have been assisting in this? We're not saying that that's the case right now, but that is textbook, something that authorities want to determine. Is this a group of people that were inspired to conduct an act of violence targeting Muslims? Was this something much different? Was this, targeting specifically the people who were indeed injured and then killed? Again, a lot of questions. And then opening the aperture. We know the FBI is now on the scene. They would not only be assisting with the crime scene forensics, but the authorities have said they're going to treat this as a hate crime until it's not. If it turns out that these two men have some other connections elsewhere around the country, which we've seen in a lot of instances, the FBI would then be able to work with their resources around the country. And then the final thing I'll note is, sometimes whenever you see an act of targeted violence, people are proud. They'll actually leave behind some type of note or communication, a so-called manifesto indicating why they did what they did. A lot of times they often don't, which obviously makes it much more difficult for authorities to try to get to that motive. There won't be a prosecution of these two individuals, but authorities still want to identify what was it that inspired this. Oftentimes that will involve looking at the electronic media of these individuals, if they have it, social media, if they have it. All of that is where you see federal investigators coming in. They work very closely with the various social media and online companies as well to try to gather information as quickly as they can. Again, to try to rule out, to make sure there isn't someone else out there who may have known what was about to happen.
Josh Gerard, what more are you hoping to learn about the motive for this? Obviously, law enforcement saying that they are presuming this is a hate crime until that is disproven.
The hate crime tag on this crime really doesn't change the way it's investigated. It may be changing the way that it's prosecuted down the road, but it's going to be investigated like any other attack. And that's exactly how it needs to be. Understanding the motive between these two teens, interviewing those friends and family, understanding where they came from. And then, as Josh Campbell just pointed out again, making sure that this isn't part of a larger organization. Is this a group that we need to be concerned with? Are there further attacks that we need to be concerned with? We also have to take a look at the way that this was carried out. We've got two shooters that didn't make it inside the building. Now, we don't know what their plan was, but most likely it was to do as much damage as possible, which means getting inside. But that little bit of resistance, having that security guard outside, seemingly prevented them from making it inside.